This is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. In this episode, I'm simultaneously filled with like hope and joy, but also this crippling, terrible sadness. This is a very unusual book. Welcome to Unspoiled. Okay, welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Natasha.
I'm Krista.
Krista's here. It's the first time I've ever co-hosted with Krista, so this is fun.
Yeah, she doesn't know how nervous I've been about this.
Oh, really? Don't be nervous. It's just people just chilling and drinking. And well, I'm drinking. You're not drinking, so maybe it's not as much fun for you.
I've got apple juice and water. It's so exciting. I can't even have Orange Crush.
Pace yourself, okay? I don't want you to go too crazy with this apple juice because I've heard stories.
It's like 1/8 apple juice and the rest is water. It's just so depressing.
Whereas I am having Malibu and pineapple in a pineapple.
Okay,
because that's how I roll.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I like trick myself into thinking that I'm having hard liquor when really Malibu's like 80% sugar and not really like strong at all. Yeah. But I'm like a house elf, too strong for a house elf, sir. I'm just like such a lightweight that this is very affecting for me, so I'm fine.
Hey, being a cheap date is not bad when you hit your 30s. That's
like it's something that I really did appreciate when I was younger. There were times when I was bummed because people would be like, keep drinking. Why have you stopped? And I'm like, because I will die, literally die. But mostly when you start to get older and have to pay for your own liquor, it's great.
I never understood.
Like, so well.
Like, oh, let me drink all of it. Like, but that's so expensive.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cheap, guys.
All right. So this book, I'm like making jokes and talking about booze so that I can avoid the horrifying opening of this book because, okay.
Yeah, there's not much that is, they don't let you feel warm and fuzzy for very long in this book.
It reminded me in some ways of like what he does. He does it in such a shorter period of time, which I think is very tricky. But in Song of Ice and Fire, you'll go back and reread the first chapters where everybody's at Winterfell and the family is whole and people are healthy and happy. And you're like, oh, this is going to be all wrecked in like 2 chapters. Oh no. But he does that in 1 book instead of like 6 books, which that's hard to like establish this world and make it feel like it matters to me in a real way quickly.
Oh my God. And it's just, sorry. No, I was just thinking when you were talking about the whole and well and everything is happy. I told you this at one point, I think on the chat for the Unspoiled patrons, but I actually do listen to one of the times that Harry goes and stays with the Weasleys in the earlier books. Just briefly. Well, that was a happy time.
Right. Yeah.
You just need that. But no, you don't get that at all here. No, none of that for you.
I started reading this, I thought, because this is a slightly longer book than some of the ones that I have covered recently. Like I got a bunch of short books in a row. I got Ready Player One, which was pretty quick. I got Blindness, and Winter's Bone was like the shortest one. It was super short. This book is 371 pages. So I saw it and was like, oh, I better get started on this because it's going to take a little while. Psych. It took me like 3 sessions of 2 hours and I was done with the book. I couldn't believe how fast it went. And I couldn't believe that despite it being as sad as it is, I still didn't want to put it down.
Oh, it was just, I blew through it right away.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I had that panic attack and thought this was 2 weeks ago, that Friday night, I read the whole thing. I don't know, my brain is not functional anymore.
Look, I twice in a row, because I want you to know you're not alone, I put my book club sticker in my planner for the coming Saturday, and it was not the coming Saturday. So I have been doing that too. I think there was something wrong with April that fucked us all up, and it's just infected us all.
Yeah, this entire 2007 or 17 was like, looked at 2016 and said, hold my beer.
Maybe that's what it is that everything has been so terrible that it feels like time has been drawn out, because it couldn't possibly have only been a week since that other horrible thing happened, right?
It's like this book, all these terrible things keep coming at you.
Crammed into this, like,
and guys, I laugh when I'm uncomfortable. I'm not laughing because I think this is humorous.
Oh, I think that's the only way to cover this book to a degree, right? Or else you literally cry. I will probably cry at some point during this podcast talking about this, because you just can't, like, okay. So,
see us avoid again.
Let's talk about the author, because you started to talk about this, and then I was like, wait, let us turn on the recording device.
Yeah.
What is it that because you said that this is partially based on his own life.
Yes. He grew up in that neighborhood with his sisters.
In Kabul, right?
In Kabul.
Okay.
His sisters and his mom and his dad. His mom was a high school teacher who taught Farsi.
Oh, okay, cool.
Much like the mom in the book who,
dead. Yeah,
has passed away.
You're all delicate, passed away. I'm like, she's dead. Yep.
She also taught foreign language or different languages at the university. So it's kind of the same. It's almost like an homage. But they moved to the United States much earlier. At the same time, the author became a doctor, as he was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then this book came out, and he always wanted to be a writer. His family was like, no, you're not allowed. And so he wrote this book and became famous and doesn't doctor anymore.
He doesn't doctor anymore. I love it.
Nope. Him and Mr. Oh God, what's the Spanish teacher's name from Community?
Oh, Senor Chang.
Senor Chang. Yeah. Also, does not doctor
he was like an
anymore.
open heart surgeon or something before he became the most beloved Asian actor of all time.
The most crazy motherfucker.
Oh my God. I just still think about him wearing that fucking merkin and leaping out of the trunk in The Hangover. What on earth? Writers, you hit gold with that one. So this book, it comes out swinging, because the very first line, I became what I am today at the age of 12 on a frigid, overcast day in the winter of 1975. I remember the precise moment, crouching behind a crumbling mud wall, peeking into the alley near the frozen creek. That was a long time ago, but it's wrong what they say about the past. I've learned about how you can bury it, because the past claws its way out. Looking back now, I realized I have been peeking into that deserted alley for the last 26 years. So that's, the author just being like, so welcome to everything that's wrong with me.
I have some issues, and sit back and relax. You're going to hear about them all.
Right. And it's really striking, because I think a lot of us have moments in our lives where we're like, that decision was much more important than I realized at the time. Like this one moment, I didn't really give it the gravity maybe that I needed it to, or I didn't think through how I was going to look back on this. But, mine are more petty. This is a devastating moment.
Yeah.
And when you find out later what exactly his relationship with his father was defined by, it's even worse, because you realize that there was no way for him to win this, because what happened, for those who are listening who have not read the book, there will be spoilers galore, as I'm sure you're used to. Amir is the main character. He's the son of a pretty wealthy dude. And he never feels accepted by his father, or never feels like he lives up to what his father hoped his son would be.
They're very different people.
Totally different. His father is what I think most of us would call good man. Like, deep in his heart, fights for the right thing, even when his life is literally on the line at times. Good man.
Yeah, he would be the guy standing up to the Nazis
Mm-hmm.
and saying no, because he almost pretty much did. So,
yeah. And
so
it's
yeah.
really, it's kind of striking because when you have this trope of the main character not being accepted by their parent, oftentimes it's set up as like, oh, they just want to do something with their life that their parent doesn't approve of, and their parent's unreasonable. And the parent is treated as a bit of a villain. But in this, the parent is right about his son, that he's not willing to take a stand on anything important. And the fact that he doesn't approve of Amir wanting to write instead of being a doctor is very secondary to that he has nailed his son's character pretty quickly. And Amir doesn't even know that he's nailed it until this happens. Like, which I think is almost the worst part somehow, is knowing that your father thinks that, wanting to prove him wrong, and in the midst of trying to prove him wrong, you prove him right.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, ouch.
You're so desperate for this man to approve of you, and then you do the one thing that he would never forgive you for if he ever found out about it.
Right? Like, I can't imagine if his father had found out. Forget it.
They would have never spoken again.
No, never. Like, oh my God. And not just this moment, because what happens here is Amir wants to win this kite competition. Let's talk about the kite competition, because what the fuck is this?
Why? There are so many things I don't understand in this world. Like, now that we know the concussions that happen from football, why? Why?
Because dudes like to throw themselves at things. Like, okay, with the football thing, I get it because there's a catharsis to that. But like kite flying,
like, why are you letting children cut their hands to ribbons?
And that's like the way that you like spending your time? Like, you're excited to go back to school with your hand sliced up because there's glass. There's powdered glass glued to the outside of the string. They call it glass string. And they use these glass strings attached to the kites to cut the other kites off, literally cut them off of their string so that they go flying. I mean,
if they had Halloween, would they be upset if there weren't razor blades in the fucking candy? Like, what the hell?
You're a man now. Eat that candy. Eat that apple.
That's
yeah, it's like a really, I had no idea this was a thing, competitive kite flying. Like, I would think if somebody told me about competitive kite flying, I would think that it was largest kite, highest in the air, that kind of thing.
Getting them to do tricks.
Right, yeah. But this is a brutal game, like, weirdly.
I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, can't you guys like do foot races like everybody knows?
Well, part of it is a foot race, right?
I know. And then like, what, like, Hassan is magic? Like, what is that?
Yeah, Hassan. Now, this is the one fault that I don't even want to call it a fault, but Hassan is so good that at times I'm like, really? Like,
it's almost the magical Negros prototype.
Yeah.
Like, he's there to basically change Amir.
Mm-hmm. And it's effective, and it doesn't, somehow, despite him being so good, it doesn't feel untrue.
No, you could see a kid, especially one raised by Ali.
Yeah.
To be this good. Like, and for starters, one of the guys I worked with, his name's Ali, and I want him to have lots of babies with the woman age 2 in Pakistan, who's not going to come over anytime soon.
Oh, boo.
But like, he's going to be such a good dad. He needs to have all the babies. So I probably put a little bit in as soon as I saw that name and went, oh, it's a very common name, but I have one person who gets that name in my brain, and he is wonderful. So this worked out well for me. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So Ali is the servant that is like around the same age as Amir's father, and Hassan is Ali's son. And they basically treat each other as if they're brothers when they're alone. But he is Hazara, which is it's like one of those combo ethnic religious titles, trying to think of the way to say this.
Yeah. I think you could go with ethnic and then be,
Yeah. And because there's a specific look that he has that people can identify that he is Hazara. And because of that, he is targeted before all the shit even starts to really go down in Afghanistan. He's targeted. And Amir is aware and doesn't stick up for him and doesn't actually acknowledge him as as close a friend as he is to anybody. Like, there's so many moments of Amir just being such a shit. Like,
and not like in a, he's every now and then he does actually do terrible things to Hassan as well, which is just hard to watch, but it seems more that he's just a coward. Just like his dad said, he's a coward. And
but then there's moments like where it's not even a cat, because he makes fun of Hassan for not being able to read.
Yeah. And it's like, well, you went to school, you little shit.
Right. Like, he knows perfectly well why he can't read. And yet he taunts him for what? Just because it's fun to him. Yeah. And I really appreciate that much later in the book when he meets his wife, she talks about like the value of teaching people to read. And he feels like this pang of shame remembering that I didn't teach him. I just made fun of him.
I was a douchebag
about
everything. Wow. There was more douchery that I didn't even recognize until just now.
So Hassan and him are doing the like big kite like final for the year before they go back to school. Winter is kite flying time. And I don't know if I was alone in this, but I didn't realize that Afghanistan got a lot of snow.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that. So they're like running through snowdrifts and everything at this point.
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah, like,
and I'm sure Hassan had amazing shoes.
Oh my God. Poor Hassan. He was probably fucking barefoot.
Well, and on top of which he's going to get teased because he has a hair lip. I mean, it's like, could you come up with more ways to make this kid just like
right?
More reviled? And I'm going to kill you, kitten.
Oh, there's a cat here. So long story short, he wants to win this kite contest to get his father's approval. He does win it. But there's a final step after cutting somebody's kite off, which is called kite running. And you run and chase down the cut kite and figure out where it's going to land and get there first. And everybody chases every kite, but the final kite that gets cut is really like a prize. And Hassan is uncannily good at this. So Amir goes and cuts the kite. Hassan goes running for it, and Amir follows, knowing that Hassan will get it and just give it to him. And he follows, and there is bully is way too mild a word.
I like that the author goes, later on I learned an English term for him, and it was sociopath.
Holy
shit.
What is this character's name? I should have written that down.
Oh God.
Like, part of me didn't, because I just didn't want to
didn't want to know.
Think about him any longer.
I'm trying to I don't want to think about this man. He's so terrible.
Asif is a sociopath, and he is a racist, and he is just everything terrible.
Oh, he likes Hitler.
He's a big Nazi.
And he's half German, so there you are.
Yep. And it has already been like poking and prodding Hassan and getting in his face about things. And Hassan is alone at an opportune moment, and Asif goes after him with his two henchmen.
Because that's what you need to do.
Of course. And it's like, oh my God, there are two rabbits running around in my yard during this very like solemn moment of me describing this awful scene, and they're leaping over each other and doing like cartwheels, and it's distracting. Yeah, Thank you for lightening the mood, rabbits.
Yay, rabbits.
But he goes and he not only beats the shit out of him, he rapes him.
Yeah, and he has the two boys. One of them is Kamal.
Mm-hmm.
This is important later.
Yep.
And they have to hold him down while it happens.
Yeah.
And, our cowardly narrator.
He's right there.
Yep.
He's right around the corner. He gets there before it starts, and he can step in, but he does not.
Yeah, I mean, he would have gotten the shit beat out of him too, but if they had tried what they did to Hassan, Amir's father, Baba, was so powerful in the city.
He could have leveled them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they would not have gotten away with shit, and they knew it.
So Amir hides and waits for it to be over, listening to the whole thing happen around the corner. And then when Asif and his friends leave, Hassan comes out and he has the kite and gives it to him and doesn't really say anything, but seems to know that he was there the whole time and seems to be aware that he didn't step in. And what's so heartbreaking is that he's like, of course you're going to be hurt by it, but he doesn't seem surprised and he doesn't seem angry. Almost like, well, of course you couldn't step in. I would never think you would step in. Which is the most damning part, is his acceptance of the whole thing. There's a point before this where Asif kind of gets in his face, and he still calls Asif by the honorific, which I don't know how to pronounce, which is basically like sir, despite this guy threatening his life and him being in a position where he could put his eye out with a slingshot. Mm-hmm. He's still calling him sir the entire time. And Amir comments on how just ingrained the hierarchy is, that even in this moment, he's still like, you know, respecting these customs and these titles. So Amir has this like, he has this victorious 30 seconds where he wins the kite.
So proud of him.
Right.
They're finally going to bond. And then.
And what kills me is that if he went and stopped this, that would have done it. That would have won his father the approval that he wanted. He thought that by staying out of the way and ensuring that he got the kite, and he even mentions how, yes, I did check to see if the kite was damaged when he handed it to me.
Guys, I'm putting my face in my hands.
Like, it's sincerely just
horrible.
Honestly, what kills me about that is the honesty of it. That he's like, yeah, you know what? I was that fucking petty and immature and cold. That I was worried about the kite, not the fact that my friend was bleeding and like about to pass out from shock.
Yeah, it's almost as if he's like, I'm going to pretend so hard that this didn't happen, that
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to act worse than normal.
Mm-hmm. So he goes home and he has to live with this thing that he did. And he is in a terrible place because this guilt is eating him up. And he doesn't want to be around Hassan, who is like his best friend. And Hassan doesn't understand why he's ignoring him and not hanging out with him anymore. And he has gone into this terrible depression, Hassan has, because of course he suffered this horrific trauma and he can't talk to his best friend about it.
And I think the other part of it is, you know, we look at later on, this happens to another character, and the character is a child and says, am I bad? Am I unclean?
Mm-hmm.
And given that Ali and Hassan are very devout Muslims, the idea of cleanliness and purity and all these other things, particularly for a boy to be raped, as sad as that is, but like the aspect of just being dirty
mm-hmm.
had to be weighing on him. We find out later also that thank God Hassan talked to somebody about it.
Right.
Even when he was a young child, but that's still, there's no way to feel not like you always want to take on some responsibility for something that happened to you, because then you haven't lost all your agency.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that's something that I think people don't understand about like the concept of somebody blaming themselves. It's that it's not just like a societal reaction, feeling like, oh, I must have done something. There's also an element of trying to maintain control over your life. and wanting to feel like, well, there has to have been something I could have done to prevent it. There has to be. This doesn't just happen, you know? And no, yeah, sometimes things do just happen because life is sometimes awful.
Yeah, you want to make sure that there's a way to not have it happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And good luck with that.
You know what's the way to not have it happen again is teach people not to be rapists. That's how.
You mean teach sociopaths not to be sociopaths? Because I think that's kind of fucked up. But if his two friends had done shit, that would have been nice.
Right? Like both his friends, his henchmen, were both uncomfortable with this clearly as it was happening.
Yeah.
And they still didn't do anything.
Fuck
so if anybody stepped up is really what the situation is like. If anybody had stepped up, this could have been prevented. But everybody was just like, and it really does lay the framework for who Asif turns out to be later.
Yeah.
And establishes how people can get to the point where they run things when they are like this because nobody steps up. That's not familiar.
And it's not familiar at all that Asif, who could give two shits about his quote unquote faith, would use his faith
and
totally use it to just be terrible to everybody around him.
So Amir is so filled with guilt that he cannot stand to be around his friend at all, to the point that he actually, after a big birthday party where he gets this beautiful watch, he plants the watch and some money under Hassan's mattress to frame him as a thief to get them kicked out, because he knows that the one thing his father can't tolerate is theft. It is like the one major thing that he has taken a stance on that is unforgivable. So he's sure that this is going to be the thing that gets Hassan the fuck away from him. And Hassan doesn't protest. He says he did steal it when confronted because he knows what Amir is doing and is trying to save him the pain of admitting anything.
Honestly,
because that's who he is.
Yeah, I'd like to think that there was a little bit deeper than the narrator saying, you know, that a 12-year-old doesn't necessarily know, or a 13-year-old at this point would know what was going on, and that maybe like Hassan's like, yeah, Dad, could we leave? Because I hate it here.
Right. That
I'd like to think that there was a bonus for the kid.
Like, I totally understand what you're saying. I'm not going to say that I don't kind of hope that too, because Hassan, like, continually taking bullets for his friend does get to the point where I'm just like, but why though?
Yeah.
He's awful.
And also being near the people who raped you. The guy came over to the house and gave a present of a book about Hitler.
He gave him Mein Kampf. He gave Asif got invited to Amir's birthday, gave him Mein Kampf, and then goes up to Hassan and like puts his hand on his shoulder while his friends are flocking him around him. And it's like, oh, hey, what's up, Hassan? And like, I mean, that is almost harder to read in some ways than the rape itself, is the fact that Hassan has to continue on being around this person and pretending that nothing happened. And not only pretending with just Asif, but his friends and Amir all also knowing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I'd just be like, hey, Dad, we have an out, and please, please. I know you really love Baba, and that's great and everything, but can we go now?
So, surprise, Amir's father forgives him, despite saying that this is an unforgivable offense. Mm-hmm. And Amir cannot fucking figure that one out. He's like, you forgave him for the thing that you always said. He said the only thing comparable to theft is lying because you're stealing somebody's right to the truth.
Yeah.
And now you're forgiving him? What the fuck? But Ali and Hassan insist on leaving anyway.
Yeah.
And it breaks Baba's heart.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense until you find out later that Hassan doesn't have a mother because she basically got pregnant, gave birth to him, and bailed because she was a promiscuous woman in a faith and a town and a country that does not look kindly on that. Not that really any do. And she was not interested in being a mom, and she wouldn't even hold him.
Yeah.
She just gave him up and left. And as it turns out, she was super, super hot. And Baba totally banged her.
Yeah.
And so Hassan is Amir's half brother.
Yeah. I mean, to me, we also kind of skipped over the fact that Ali he came to live with Baba when he was 5.
Mm-hmm.
And they grew up together very closely. And Baba, being a decent human being,
right,
felt very close to him, but because of this caste system,
mm-hmm.
Took him on as a servant, and then watched this happen. To me, I wasn't thinking, oh, this is confusing, simply because I was like, this is his family. There's nobody else that they really have that's close besides this Amir Khan.
Yeah, I agree that it didn't send up any signals to me, because I'm thinking, yeah, Amir, of course you don't understand why he's forgiving them, because you're shitty and wouldn't understand somebody really meaning something to you and not wanting them completely out of your fucking life. But instead, it does turn out to be that there's an extra layer that we didn't know about. So I kind of liked that it's not completely inexplicable as it happens.
Yeah.
But then you do find out that there's an additional motivation. So while in the moment you're like, yeah, Amir, maybe you're just terrible, it turns out he wasn't totally wrong to just be like, but what the fuck, Dad? So I kind of enjoyed that being an extra layer to this whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, it made a lot of sense, just from how it also explained the culture a lot better, because they're talking about how blood relations and blood ties are very different from American to Afghani cultures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was something my mother is white and my father is Colombian. And it's just something that is a little bit more important in a lot of other countries, this sense of family. And I didn't really understand it a lot growing up, because my mom was trying to explain to me. And she was like, in America, there's this real sense of the individual and going your own way and doing what you want to do with your life, regardless of what your family says, because it's, you living a true life. But when she explained it, I'm thinking, well, they're backwards, right? That sucks for other countries. And now I'm like, while I still prefer the go your own way thing, because there are plenty of people in terrible families who should not feel obligated to them, I understand a lot better economically and just how advantageous that would be to stay close with your family and have people living together in ways that are really not common in the United States. Having 3 generations under one roof is not seen that often. And how that would really culturally be a comfort, especially when you've emigrated somewhere,
Oh, yeah.
So this kind of brought that to brought another perspective to it, because we start off so far before their immigration to the US in this book, that once they start to stick together in their neighborhoods, their Afghani neighborhoods in the United States, I'm much more oh yeah, totally. Do that, guys, you need each other.
Yeah.
And it makes that whole argument about, well, you need to assimilate into our culture and start learning English. And to a degree, I'm just guys, if you were going to another country, you would be with every American you could find. You guys would totally set up your own neighborhood and keep speaking English if you could. Don't fucking lie.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this before, but this past Christmas, my boyfriend takes his kids every year to do charity work that day.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, he's a much better person than I am. But I went along, and we actually visited this year. We visited and gave out gifts to kids who were refugees, and this year it was Afghani families. So little on the nose.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people were so good at learning the language, but we met this one woman, and she was pretty young. She was like maybe Owen's age, and came to this country, and her husband was at work. But her little boys one was playing soccer, and one was there with her. And this is what I could gather from what she was saying. She wasn't that good with English, and everything in her house had the English word and how to pronounce it on a flashcard taped to the thing.
Wow.
Was trying so hard to learn all the words.
Mm-hmm.
So when we came in, there was a social worker that went around with us, and she was talking. And finally I was like, look, you are totally overwhelming her. Clearly you've never been here before. And I'm saying this in my head because I'm not that much of a dick. And I look at her and I say, I've got the package. I say, toy, son. And she goes, oh, thank you. And gets this look on her face.
Oh.
And her little boy's like 2, so he's not really understanding anything that's going on, nor does he care. Like, he probably understands the words, could care less.
Right.
So he's opening it up, and it's a Rubik's Cube.
Oh my God.
And kid doesn't care, but mom is flipping out excited.
Because she remembers it?
Yeah, you could tell her, she would like had that look of, this isn't mine until he goes to bed.
Right, yeah.
I like almost wanted to dive into the truck of goofy presents and see if I could find another one for her.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
I mean, like they all worked together. It's a huge compound outside of DC of all different kinds of refugees, and the kids all end up playing soccer together in a big field, and none of them speak originally the same language, so they learn English from each other. Mm-hmm. But it's the moms and the dads do like cling together because it's such a scary situation. I mean, one of the moms we met, she gave birth as a plane was landing.
Ooh, brother.
And another family stayed with her because she was apart from her husband. So they got delayed for like 3 months in Toronto because of all the paperwork getting screwed up. But they stayed, even though they didn't know her because she was Afghani, and she needed a dude with her.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. God, I can't imagine giving birth all alone on a plane in a foreign, like, oh my God, forget it. Oh, and it's giving me anxiety just to think about.
She already had 2 other kids.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, they were really nice. Anybody who doesn't think that refugees should be here can burn.
Yeah, right. Pretty much. Especially when this is what I feel like this book needs to be required reading, because there's no possible way that you can read this book and not gain a measure of empathy and compassion for the situation that people are in, not only trying to immigrate, but then later with the adoption process and issues.
I just want to go over there and steal kids.
Right.
I'm terrible. I have no patience for red tape.
So what winds up happening is we have the attacks that begin, I think, in the 80s is when it happens.
Yeah.
And him and his father are smuggled out. And there's this scene where his father stands up to a guy who is trying to rape this woman, even though the guy has a gun and is a soldier and has the law on his side, basically. And Baba will not allow it. Yeah, and is Russian, which causes this the Russian insurgents, I guess, is that the correct word? Causes a lifetime hatred of Russians in Baba, and he won't even let a Russian doctor look at him later on in life.
Yeah, I mean, it's the guy is saying, well, if you let me have this woman who is pregnant, no less,
and there with her husband,
if you let me have her, I'll let you keep going, or you're stopped here and you're stuck, even though you're trying to flee the country.
Yep.
And that is when we know that Baba is not a Nazi.
Baba does something that I don't know anybody that would make this stand. Honestly, I would love to say that I would do this. I don't know, with somebody having a fucking Kalashnikov in my face, would I? I mean, I don't know.
I've been in situations where I thrust myself into dangerous situations before I think, hey, I could get hurt. I've broken up fistfights on the metro because I'm stupid. Yeah. 2 guys much bigger than me, and all I can think of, oh, if that black guy gets caught, he's going to get in trouble, and that's not going to be fair because that's a Trump supporter. And I run in the middle of that.
Was it really like recently with the whole Trump thing?
Yeah, it was back when the Muslim ban just first came out. There were a bunch of protests going on, and I actually did run in the middle of two guys and, and said, like, just huge booming voice, stop, blah, blah, blah. But like, that was an instantaneous reaction. I don't know if I would have backed down.
Yeah, because this has a little bit of a slow burn to it where they've been stopped and the soldier's acting weird and is drunk and they're trying to pass and he's being a dick, and then he presents this whole thing. So there's already a very strong sense of like, this could go left real quick.
Yeah.
And luckily, Baba, like, this guy has his gun pointed at him and is 2 seconds away, I have no doubt, from firing on him. And one of his commanders comes out and is like, what the fuck, dude? And that is the only thing that saves Baba's ass. Otherwise, he would have been full holes.
And the guy probably would have shot up the rest of the truck, too, is the other part. I mean, when you take that risk, you sadly sometimes take that risk for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. And then the husband comes and like is so sweet. I'm so glad that happened that way, because I couldn't take another rape.
That was something that I kind of I was pleasantly surprised by. Was there are 2 rapes,
3.
One that we pretty much see, and another person who's raped more than once that we never see, but and another victim that we meet briefly who dies. They're all male.
Yeah.
That was kind of a pleasant surprise to me, because it's super easy to just fall back on the women getting raped thing as a shocking, terrible, whatever.
And statistically, you'd think that at some point, but at the same time, Amir doesn't know any women.
And also, I kind of feel like it's almost taken as such a given that women are going to be raped that it's almost not worth mentioning.
Yeah.
To a degree, which is fucked up, but I appreciated it, to be honest, because it's just such a tired thing to put women in danger in stories that it was. I constantly was like, are we doing this? He kept bringing up things that made me go, oh God, is this going to be the one? And then he kept not doing it. And I was like, oh, cool. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, the closest we get is when Hassan's mom comes back, and it's pretty clear that she has been.
Yeah, and her face is cut up.
Her face is cut up. She apparently has, according to local lore, is a whore, although hard to say if she got paid for that work.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those moments where you're like, okay, well, something terrible happen to her, but we're not going to be graphic or exploitive about it.
Yep. Which is a big, like, this book is filled with tragedy and the worst parts of human nature, but it never feels like blindness felt, where blindness, it was for the sake of it. It really felt like to me. Did you read Blindness?
No, I didn't.
It is a like apocalypse style, and it turns out to kind of not be, but it's, the whole thing is supposed to be that the world goes blind and what that does to people when they can't function, like they can't even find their way home from work because there is literally nobody who can see to help them get home. They don't know where their house is. They don't know where their car is. And how society just instantly crumbles just because they can't see. And it's an interesting premise, and the exploration of what it would do to people I would find interesting, but I thought the author leaned way too heavily on most people are just terrible, and there were like 2 decent human beings, and one of them takes way too long to take action on a couple things that I thought it was very obvious how she should handle it immediately. And there are 2 extended rape scenes that last almost an entire chapter.
What?
And yeah, because they're trading their wives for supplies.
What?
Yeah.
You're all blind. It doesn't matter which one.
They trade their wives, and spoilers for blindness, but I covered it already, so it's fair game. And it's like this long, detailed, like multi-woman explanation of exactly how they're being raped and how it went down and what the men are doing and saying.
What?
Completely unnecessary, absolutely like superfluous. And what killed me is that throughout this story, one woman is sighted and she has a pair of scissors and she's in a room full of blind fucking men and she doesn't do anything, which gave me a goddamn break. She finally does, but it takes a second round of raping for her to do something.
Like, no.
And
what
this,
the fuck?
exactly, like, it's so unbelievable to me that anybody would, like, who has the kind of advantage that she had, where she's not only sighted and but she has a weapon, would just, like, let this happen. And it felt like he just wanted the rapes to happen as an author, and so had her make this inexplicable decision because he just wanted to layer on the misery and the tragedy for the sake of it.
Or has a thing.
Frankly, yeah. And that's what I appreciated about this book, is that it's full of tragedy, but every instant feels true. Every instant feels like, yeah, this is horrible. Also, there is literally no other way this could go.
Yeah.
Like,
and he doesn't really hone in on anything really bad except for the one time, to me, when
it never feels gratuitous at all.
The only point where I was just like, well, but this seems like Amir is almost like relieved when he's getting his face pounded in finally.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most graphic part of the book.
Mm-hmm.
So
thank
you. And, writers out there.
Yeah. Like, this is how you do this. So they immigrate to the US, and it's mostly wealthy families that are able to do this. And he and his father grow a lot closer, mostly because they don't have any money. So they have to start going to flea markets and running flea markets together. And they will get a van and go to yard sales and buy up all kinds of junk and then sell them at flea markets and make a little profit. And it actually starts out working pretty well for them.
Yeah, and it's something that a lot of other Afghani families do.
Mm-hmm.
We used to dumpster dive and then sell stuff for garage sales in my family. I don't know about yours.
My dad used to dumpster dive, but he kept it. He didn't sell it.
Yeah.
It was always like the thing where we would see something on the side of the road and I would be like, because I'd know he was about to pull over, like, yep, here we go.
My poor ex-husband had that face so many times. He did.
My dad drove a truck, so he was always ready to take whatever,
Oh, yeah. I learned how to fix electronic stuff, so.
Okay, yeah. So that's a little bit of a Ready Player One thing going on there.
Oh, see,
Because he's always fixing old computers and stuff that people have tried to throw out.
Yeah, why do that? You can fix it, and in 5 years it becomes retro. So there you go. My uncle fixes more record players than you can throw into a cliff.
Throw into a cliff.
Into a cliff, not off the cliff.
So he meets his future wife there. And
awesome.
Yeah, she's great. When he first meets her, it's really, I wasn't aware how strict the rules for courting were.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I knew that you couldn't be alone with her. I knew that rumors could start at the drop of a hat over like nothing. Mm-hmm. But I didn't realize that even stopping to speak to her in broad daylight in front of people was a problem. And it's not like propriety. It's just that everybody's going to be talking about it always, forever. And at one point, her father isn't sure what his intentions are because she has already run away from home one time. So she's not a virgin because she shacked up with some dude and she was doing heroin, I think.
I didn't really get that she was doing.
She like tells him specifically that she was doing some drug.
Yeah, I just can't remember what it was.
I thought it was heroin because I thought it was something serious, and I was kind of like, oh shit.
Well, let me see if I can find it because I can type in that.
But she is really concerned because he grows like the minute he sees her, he's infatuated with her, and it takes him ages. Like, we're talking literal months from the moment he sees her until he actually gets up the courage to speak to her in any capacity. And once he finally starts talking to her, it's pretty clear to everybody what's going on, but her dad is not thrilled because he worries that some guy is going to come and take advantage of her again.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, Amir tells his father, like, they've talked privately, like, once by accident, like they weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
But Amir's like, yeah, I want to marry her, though. So let's get that started.
Yeah. Well, the mom is always trying to con him into coming around because she likes him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Baba, as much as they don't have money now, because of all the things he did back in Afghanistan to help so many people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so many people that he helped.
Yeah, he built orphanages, like he did all kinds, donated, like, because there's like a time of year where you're supposed to like give away a bunch of food to certain, like you give away 40% of your food or something.
Yeah.
Is that for Ramadan?
It's a part of Ramadan, yeah.
And he's like, oh no, give all of them the food. Like, yeah. I don't need to keep 60% of this. Just take all of it because I have plenty. It's fine.
Yeah.
So in that way, he's very progressive.
Yeah, and he's loaned money to people and you know, like, made sure they could start up their lives, and like it just had a lot of faith in people and went out of his way for them.
Mm-hmm. So once Amir asks his father, because he can't ask for her hand in marriage himself, his father has to ask on his behalf, and it's this formal thing. And Amir asks his father to do it for him, and his father is dying of cancer at this point. So they accept, but she has to call Amir up and confess to him this dark secret about how she ran away and thinks that he won't want to marry her once he finds out.
Yeah.
But he has his own horrible secret. So he's like, no, it's fine. Nope, he sure doesn't. He's like, hey, thanks for bearing your soul to me. We good? I'm not going to reciprocate or anything. I just want to know if we're done now.
Because you is hot.
Mm-hmm.
You probably know how to do stuff. Yeah.
Right.
And the other part that I adore is this makes Amir's father, Baba, so happy. So happy and so proud. And he's the one. And he
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, he knows the entire story about what this girl did.
Mm-hmm.
And never mentions it to Amir. Says there's some rumor, something happened, I don't know, which is total bullshit. He knows exactly what happened. Yeah. But he doesn't care.
Baba is just more progressive. He really is. Like, in some ways he's not, but most in the ways that matter, he is.
Yeah.
And what I found kind of interesting about how this was handled is that Amir doesn't express any interest in women until he meets her. And even after that, he never talks about it again. There's no like, oh, I was growing up and starting to notice women thread in any of his like years, you know, once he leaves and goes to the US or anything. It's just her. That's it. Yeah. Which I'm not sure if I completely believe, but I liked it because it just doesn't really matter to the story. So I don't need to spend time on it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know there are some guys who just don't really have that. They don't really have that drive that I think we both have, and you know, a lot of our friends have.
I don't know what you mean.
What are you talking about?
What?
I don't understand. I'm not bad. I'm just drawn away.
I'm just potted that way.
But yeah, he just seems this guy who there are certain things he's focusing on, and he's kind of almost, as weird as it is, an ascetic in some ways. And so I'm not entirely surprised. It's this romantic idea that he likes just as much as he likes her and sees who she is. It's like this huge melding has to occur before he's interested.
It reminds me of a line from Big Fish where he goes and talks to the woman that he thinks his father had an affair with. And it turns out they did not have an affair because his dad wasn't interested. And she said, to your father, there were two women in the world, your mother and everybody else. And that really feels like how it is for Amir. There's his wife, and then there are other women who just don't factor into this at all.
Yeah, and it's the one part of the story where Amir has a little bit of an edge on Baba.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he doesn't know it until later, but yeah.
Because Baba didn't have to have the talk of "don't you dare," because he's just like, no, that's not something I'm into. Like, where the fuck did this kid come from?
Right. So he gets called back to Afghanistan after getting married. He's married for a few years, and they don't have a child. And it turns out one of them is they're not even sure that they're infertile. They get tested, and it seems like they're both fine, but for whatever reason, they can't conceive. And it's really like eating away at them. And their relationship has suffered because they both just really wanted a child. And adoption is simply not really okay, like in terms of the traditional standards of Afghanis. Like her father, when they mention adoption, immediately against it. Yeah. And she sort of fights him on it in principle, but you get the sense that she doesn't really want to adopt either. Yeah. Like, you know.
Yeah, she and Amir both talk about it and go, look, you know, it doesn't seem, you should not adopt a child that we don't feel will love.
Right. Yeah, she's like, I'll always like a tiny bit wish that this had turned out differently, which is not fair.
Yeah. Because she's so nice.
I know. It's like, I can't imagine her not being 100% for her child, but so he has gotten called back to Afghanistan by Rahim, who was his father's friend, who he suspects. Yeah, he's great. And Amir suspects that Rahim knows what happened with Hassan. Because he did. And he calls up Amir and tells him over the phone, there is a way to be good again. And that's how he gets him to come back. And then springs the news on him that, hey, Hassan was your half brother. Also, he had a son and they were living at your dad's old house. Also, he and his wife were both murdered by the Taliban. And it's like he just buries the lead so much. Why did you wait so long to say this? Oh my God.
Oh my God. And like, and even the part where he's talking about Hassan and his wife, and like it goes into this big description of what happened, of how Rahim found them. Rahim Khan is just, he's so awesome. I love him. I know he's not real and I don't care.
Yeah.
But he goes and finds them. He brings them back to the house that he was taking care of for Baba. And the fact that Hassan, because they were Hazara, were not allowed to have any property of their own in the town, but they were taking care of it. They raised a child. Hassan's mother came back and helped them raise a child. She passed away. Like they taught, you know, like the kid knows how to read because Hassan learned how to read, all this other stuff that's just like so happy. And Hassan writes Ali
this letter. I'm totally reading this letter.
Oh God.
I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Amir Agha, which I'm hoping I say that right. Alas, the Afghanistan of our youth is long dead. Kindness is gone from the land and you cannot escape the killing. Always the killing. In Kabul, fear is everywhere. In the streets, in the stadium, in the markets. It's a part of our lives here, Amir Agha. The savages who rule our Watan don't care about human decency. The other day, I accompanied Farzana Jan to the bazaar to buy some potatoes and naan. She asked the vendor how much the potatoes cost, but he did not hear her. I think he had a deaf ear. So she asked louder, and suddenly a young Talib ran over and hit her on the thighs with his wooden stick. He struck her so hard she fell down. He was screaming at her and cursing and saying the Ministry of Vice and Virtue does not allow women to speak loudly. She had a large purple bruise on her leg for days, but what could I do except stand and watch my wife get beaten? If I fought, that dog would have surely put a bullet in me, and gladly. Then what would happen to my Sarab, which is his son? The streets are full enough already of hungry orphans, and every day I thank Allah that I am alive. not because I fear death, but because my wife has a husband and my son is not an orphan.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the United States, a lady just got arrested and sentenced to a year in prison for laughing during hearing. So, we don't have actual sticks with women getting beaten, but there is women are not allowed to speak loudly going on now. That's being established. So that's fun. And then I wish you could see Sarab. He's a good boy. Rahim Khan Sahib and I have taught him to read and write so he does not grow up stupid like his father. And can he shoot with that slingshot? I take Sarab around Kabul sometimes and buy him candy. There is still a monkey man in Shari now, and if we run into him, I pay him to make his monkey dance for Sarab. You should see how he laughs. The two of us often walk up to the cemetery on the hill. Do you remember how we used to sit under the pomegranate tree there and read from the Shanama? I think is how you say that. Yeah. The droughts have dried the hill and the tree hasn't borne fruit in years, but Sarab and I still sit under its shade and read to him. It is not necessary to tell you that his favorite part is the one with his namesake, Rustam and Sharab. Soon he will be able to read from the book himself. I am a very proud and lucky father. And that kind of kills me because, this pomegranate tree is, oh, hello, cat. I forgot you were even in here. This pomegranate tree is a symbol for their friendship. It's where they would go and sit when they were young. Amir carved their names into it. Amir and Hassan, Sultans of Kabul. And then, now Hassan goes and sits under it and it doesn't bear fruit anymore. And it's just like it's not subtle, but it's just kind of like, oh God, it's still good.
Man.
Right?
Yeah. But then he has this little dude who's so cute.
So, yeah, he is taken out into the street and shot one day when
Rahim
isn't there. Thank you. I kept wanting to call him Hamir. And the son is brought to a orphanage. And this is such a tough thing because Amir gets driven all the way to this orphanage by a man named Farid, who is extremely resentful of Amir from the moment he claps eyes on him and establishes exactly who Amir is. And he isn't wrong.
No.
But he thinks Amir is coming home to sell his property and get out. That he is basically abandoning Afghanistan, like all rich people have, if they can.
Which,
Right?
like, but if you could, would you?
Mm-hmm.
You have kids.
And once he finds out that, because it's kind of, Rahim has fed Amir this lie that I think is so obvious, bless your heart, for believing this, Amir. Yeah. But he tells him that there is this American couple that he needs to bring this orphan boy to.
Who the fuck bought that?
I mean, he's just not thinking straight, I think is really what it is. But he tells him, like, you go pick up this boy and bring him to these Americans who will take care of him. And Amir's like, not even interested in doing that much initially. Mm-hmm. But he finally agrees to do it. And once Farid finds out that's why Amir is here, he gains a lot more respect for him and starts treating him like a human being.
Yeah. And he's really nice to him. And also
mm-hmm.
Farid is living pretty much dirt poor with his kids and
his brother.
Yeah, and the kids are pretty much malnourished, not on the fault of the parents at all. It's just there's
mm-hmm.
no food. So Amir does the right thing and stuffs a bunch of money under his mattress because he knows they won't take the money.
I love that because everything terrible had started with the mattress hiding money under it before.
Yeah, it was
he does a lot of these callbacks in this, which I like.
Yeah, he keeps on undoing things that
mm-hmm.
he did.
So they get to this orphanage, and the director of the orphanage is named Zaman, and he tells them that Sarab isn't here. And they're like, what the fuck? Why? And he's like, so there's this guy that comes and takes kids away in exchange for giving us money and food. And I don't even have enough to feed the children more than twice a day, sometimes not even that. So I have to do what's best for all of them and allow him to take one every now and then. Fareed is ready to literally murder this man right there.
Yeah.
He jumps over the desk and is like strangling and beating him, and it is understandable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and we should point out that Baba's orphanage has been bombed to shit, and this is a different orphanage that isn't nearly so nice.
Yep. And they're just barely functioning. Like when they go in there, the guy's office is a table and 2 chairs. And otherwise the place is like bare, cracked concrete and plaster. And he tells them that, because Fareed's saying, you're selling children, and the only way that Amir is able to get Fareed to not kill the guy is to point out that the children are watching.
Yeah.
Because all of the kids are crowded around like, what the fuck? And some of them are actually crying.
Well, yeah, because it's bad enough. Like, this guy does feed them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this scene actually reminded me, I don't know if you paid attention, but there was this big uncovering of the scandal of one of the orphanages in Ireland, that there were all these
I didn't hear about that.
So there were all these bodies that they found of, the deceased that had ended up they hadn't buried them properly. They were in a sewer, basically.
Jesus.
And if you look a little further, because, the Catholic Church has done terrible things, and a lot of it's in Ireland. But it was because the nuns were given only a certain amount of money. And so they had to choose, from what I can tell, between burying the kids properly and trying to save the ones that were still starving from malnutrition. And it's that, what the fuck do you do?
Yep.
What do you do?
Yeah, this is not an unusual type of choice for people who don't have money. We have to choose between eating and health or respect or dignity all the time.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say we, because luckily I'm not in that position anymore. But yeah, it's so hard to watch people judge this. And you understand why with this especially, but Zaman says, I haven't been paid in over 6 months. I'm broke because I've spent my life savings on this orphanage. Everything I ever owned or inherited, I sold to run this godforsaken place. You think I don't have family in Pakistan and Iran? I could have run like everyone else, but I didn't. I stayed. I stayed because of them. If I deny him 1 child, he takes 10. So I let him take 1 and leave the judging to Allah. I swallow my pride and take his goddamn filthy, dirty money. And then I go to the bazaar and I buy food for the children. Fareed dropped his eyes.
Yep.
I enjoy Fareed because he's
he's the emotional response that you expect.
Mm-hmm. But then he has the self-awareness to stop and be like, all right, maybe I'm being a little harsh here, man.
Yeah, I'm not doing this selfless thing that this guy has done and putting himself in danger for these kids. And
perpetually in danger because he has to deal with this guy all the time.
Well, and on top of which, as we've pointed out, Afghani culture with orphans, it's not like anybody's going to adopt the kids.
Mm-hmm.
No one's going to adopt them. They're just going to live there forever until they're adults.
Yep. So he goes to try and track down the dude who bought the kids, and he tells them that the guy wears these sunglasses and you will see him at halftime. And that is probably in retrospect, one of the more chilling moments to me. How much of a throwaway line that is once you find out what he means.
Yeah.
Because in the moment you're reading it, you're like, oh, see him at halftime. Okay. Weird, I guess. Oh, okay. Yeah, halftime is
Fareed knows what this
stoning
is.
time. Yeah, Fareed's totally aware.
He's like, what the fuck? Halftime shit? Are you insane? Do we have to get this kid?
Oh my God.
And, halftime, there's going to be like a little band, right? No? Oh, shit.
Yeah, he walks in and because this is halftime at a soccer game. First of all, I want to crack up at the fact that they are still allowed to play soccer, but they have to do it in long pants and long sleeve shirts, and there is no cheering allowed. Which, why then? Just cancel it.
If you have to have something to cancel so that people have one thing they'll still do.
Yeah, I guess so.
Terrible.
So he talks about how everything is a mess in this stadium, and he says the pitch was a mess. There were holes and craters everywhere, most notably a pair of deep holes in the ground behind the south end goalposts. And he mentions this as thinking that it's just some sort of weird imperfection. And it turns out those are strategically put there because 2 people are brought in a truck. Apparently, all of the Talibs ride around in red trucks, specifically red, because that gets mentioned a couple times. Mm-hmm. And they are lowered into these holes to the neck and stoned by one dude. Because I thought this was going to be like a group activity.
Nope.
But it's one guy wearing these sunglasses who winds up like a pitcher in the major leagues and chucks stones at their heads. And it's a woman who was caught cheating with a man, and the man is there with her.
Yeah.
And they are stoned to death at halftime, and then their bodies are removed and the game continues. This feels like this is some Hunger Games shit. This is the kind of thing that if it weren't written about a situation happening right now, I would think, okay, lighten up a little bit on this, buddy. You're going a little far. A halftime stoning show, okay. No, I checked it out. I checked it out. This is a thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't check it out. I just assumed it was true.
I didn't check it out really because I thought he was lying, but I just was like, how frequent is this? And no, it's a thing that happens, or at least happened consistently. Yeah. And as it turns out, once he goes to see this guy, which right here, Amir starts to be way braver than me because he sees this man murder a couple of people. Like, God knows how many people this guy has murdered en toto. But let's talk about how many he's murdered today, because I'm going to guess those aren't the first 2 of the day.
And he doesn't do it in a clean way or like a quick way.
No, he does it for the funsies.
Yeah.
And for Amir still goes to see him, and Fareed drives him there, but is like, yeah, I'm gonna wait here if that's cool. And even though Amir wants the company, he doesn't blame him for a second. He's like, oh yeah, no, you stay here. That's totally fine.
You have a family that will end, the kids will end up at the orphanage we were just at. Let's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So he goes in there and he is asking about this boy, Sarab. And this dude is still being a little cagey about it. And it's like, why don't you bring Sarab in here, guys, to his assistance?
Oh, and we should point out that Amir has a fake beard and all this other stuff to try and look
right
proper Afghani.
And they go in and yank it off his face. And he's about to piss his pants, which he should be.
Yeah, it's the Taliban, warm and fuzzy Taliban.
And would you like to see him? Pardon? I said, would you like to see him? Would you like to see my boy? His upper lip curled up in a sneer when he said those last 2 words. He carried a stereo, a boombox on his shoulder. Behind him, A boy dressed in a loose sapphire blue pirantumban followed. The resemblance was breathtaking, disorienting. Rahim Khan's Polaroid hadn't done justice to it. The boy had his father's round moon face, his pointy stub of a chin, his twisted seashell ears, and the same slight frame. It was the Chinese doll face of my childhood, the face peering above fanned-out playing cards all those winter days, the face behind the mosquito net when we slept on the roof of my father's house in the summer. His head was shaved, his eyes darkened with mascara, and his cheeks glowed with an unnatural red. When he stopped in the middle of the room, the bells strapped around his anklets stopped jingling. This is rough.
Yeah.
So he is made to dance, and he does it in this resigned fashion. There's no resistance there. This is just his life.
Yeah.
And Bia, my boy, the Talib said, calling Sarab to him. Sarab went to him head down, stood between his thighs. The Talib wrapped his arms around the boy. How talented he is, nay, my Hazara boy, he said. His hands slid down the child's back, then up, felt under his armpits. One of the guards elbowed the other and snickered. The Talib told them to leave us alone. He locked his arms around Sarab's belly, rested his chin on the boy's shoulder. Sarab looked down at his feet, but kept stealing shy, furtive glances at me. The man's hands slid up and down the boy's belly, up and down, slowly, gently. I've been wondering, the Talib said, his bloodshot eyes peering at me over Sarab's shoulder. Whatever happened to the old Babalu anyway? The question hit me like a hammer between the eyes. I felt the color drain from my face. My legs went cold, numb. So it is Asif. I'm like, where am I getting these names from? Asif, the old sociopathic bully, is now like a leader in the Taliban. Nobody saw that coming. And like, what's awful is I didn't see it coming. Maybe I should have, but I just didn't. I didn't think we were going to recognize the guy.
Yeah, I assumed he was going to end up in the Taliban just because of who he was.
But like, I didn't think he was going to play this kind of role.
Yeah,
like I thought we'd just hear about it, you know?
I mean, it makes perfect sense because that was, it seems like it might have been his first real victim. So here's this recreation of his first victim.
Yep.
And, you know, he's evil and
pure evil.
I just, ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So he has this fucking child that he has been forcing to dance and raping and handing around to be raped. And Amir is given an ultimatum that we're going to fight each other. And he goes out and tells his guards, whoever comes out of here alive, they get to leave. If he comes out and I'm not here, you still let him pass and you do not do anything to him. And then he starts to beat the shit out of Amir, who has no fighting experience, is taken rather by surprise at the way this whole thing starts, and is crushed to the point that as he eats grapes before this talk begins, he thinks to himself, little did I know this would be the last solid food I ate in months. And it is the kind of injury that when people saw him, they went pale and looked like they might faint afterwards.
Yeah.
And he is gonna lose. He's gonna die here.
Yeah, in front of the little boy that he's trying to save, no less.
And Sarab winds up saving his ass by coming out here with a fucking his slingshot, which I don't know how he's allowed to keep that.
Well, because it probably reminds him of his son.
So you think that Asif purposely let him keep it?
Yeah, I think that kid was allowed to look as much like Hassan as possible because it got
Interesting.
off.
Okay. That makes sense. Because that I had a little bit of a problem with. I'm like, why are they going to let this kid have a weapon, especially when he's really good at it?
I don't think they knew how good he was at it.
Maybe, yeah, that's true.
I mean, like, you know, how many people actually paid attention to how good Hassan was with it?
Mm-hmm. True. So this kid gives us Asif like a couple chances to just walk away. And Asif is just like, fuck you, kid. What are you talking about? And then he shoots his eye out with a fucking bolt from a table, which I was like, because this bolt thing is set up a chapter ago at a like little restaurant that Amir is at, where he notes the weird bolts that this table is held together with. And I thought, this is a weird detail to like focus on. Why does he need me to know this?
Mm-hmm.
And then later he says, oh, and this table was put together the same way as the other one that I had noticed with these walnut sized bolts. And I'm like, why are you keeping talking to me about this? Well,
there's a reason.
Oh man. And that shit, it doesn't kill Asif,
which is a shame,
but it also isn't like, it doesn't just pop out. It's lodged in his eye socket and he is screaming, get it out, when finally Amir is able to like book it out of that place with Saran.
Yeah.
And
it's going to be humiliating because he got beaten by either Amir or the truth that a tiny little boy kicked his ass.
Yep. Either one is so good.
May he live 1,000 deaths.
Sarab is... Okay. Oof. So he gets Sarab out of there. And Fareed sees him and is like, what the fuck happened to you? Oh my God, get in the truck. And they bail out of there and he passes out and Fareed has brought him to a hospital. And he keeps waking up and going under again and waking up and going under again. And it turns out they had to wire his jaw shut. And he is just in such tremendous pain because he had like a punctured lung and a bunch of broken ribs and his fucking face was crushed in, like his
cheekbone,
orbital bone around his eye was like, and oh my God, I can't imagine. And it takes him quite a while to recover. And while he's recovering, he's trying to befriend Sarab, but Sarab is very quiet. You think? It's rough here. Because, and I appreciated this because it is very tempting to make this kid just be super grateful. And he's unable to be super grateful because he's fucking traumatized.
Out of all the characters, this little boy seems like he's painted with the most detail. That's believable.
Yeah, he... Finally, Amir finds out that those Americans never existed, that he's supposed to bring this little boy to. Surprising no one.
Except
for him. Which I'm not even sure he was surprised either. Like, once he hears the news, he's just kind of like, welp. And finally comes around and is like, oh, okay, so maybe he can come home with us. And he calls his wife and asks her what she thinks. And she's like, fucking duh, of course. What are you even asking me? Like, just let's go. Bring him home.
Because she's the best. Because
she's awesome.
Yeah.
And they relocate temporarily. Where do they go? Is it Istanbul?
No.
No, they wind up... Are they in Pakistan later?
I think they're in Kurdistan. No, they're still in Afghanistan because they can't leave with the kid.
Right. That's right. Yeah. So this is the part where it's like rough because we've seen enough of the way that Afghanistan functions anyway, and then the state that it has fallen into now, and to know that this whole birth and death certificate thing is simply not how things function.
No, there's not going to be a death certificate for two people shot in the street by Talibs.
Right. And somebody who was like born in a mud hut behind a house to servants is not going to have a birth certificate either.
Yeah.
most likely. But these things are required for the adoption to prove that he hasn't just picked up some random kid and stolen him from his parents and is trying to bring him home with him.
Yeah. Which, I also understand, because the child trafficking has to be terrible.
This is a real Wire moment for me, where you're like, I fucking hate the system so much, but it's there because people are terrible in such a variety of delightful ways.
Yeah.
That we have to keep a handle on it somehow, but then that very system put in place to protect people fucks them over royally.
I am so shocked that he couldn't find somebody to doctor those papers for him.
I don't think it even occurred to him to do that.
Because again, I'm worse than every other character you've ever met.
I think that you just have experience with the bureaucracy, and I don't think he was prepared for that. And once you tell somebody, oh, we don't have that information, I don't think that he thought they'd buy it if he suddenly turned up with papers. Personally, I think he could have said, oh, I found them after all. No worries.
Yeah. I sent one of the servants, whatever.
Right? Yeah, somebody.
Here's a toy for your child, sir. He seems so lovely.
So when he's talking to the guy about the adoption thing, Amir gets heated.
Yeah.
And asks him, do you have any children?
Oh, God.
And the guy doesn't say anything. And Amir takes that as a negative and is like, yeah, that's what I thought. They should have somebody behind that desk who knows what it's like to actually want a child. And he stalks out of there feeling pretty proud of himself. And he says something to the receptionist outside, your boss is very rude. And she goes, oh, poor John. Ever since his daughter killed herself, he hasn't been the same. Just what are you doing to me, Khaled? Every instance of anything, you're just like, well, here's another layer of awful.
Well, I almost in some ways appreciated it, because I often get from women that I don't know very well that they'll be like, oh, well, you don't know what it's like because, you've never been pregnant. And I'm like, I've never given birth.
Right.
I've been pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I do know some of it. But
right.
Thanks for assuming.
It's just the whole, this book is really big on people assuming they know something about a person. And this, because that's Fareed's whole character, right? Him just going around assuming the worst of people and having to have them slap his face and be like, bitch, listen, there are things that happened, okay? And this is just an instance of Amir doing that himself. And it's really easy to forget that people are all people.
Yep.
Just because somebody is standing in the way of your particular thing. But he does say later, because he's talking to Sarab, that was a bad man, because Sarab is worried about shooting that guy's eye out.
Yeah.
And he's like, some people can get better, but some don't. And they're just bad. And that's it.
Yeah.
And it's something that I really struggle with, because I want to believe that there is good in everybody. But maybe there is good in everybody. But if they choose to look at that and explore that, is their choice. And that's not always the choice that people make. So whether the good is there is sort of irrelevant, because you just make your choices regardless of what's there.
I mean, it's a lot more cheesy version in the Dresden Files, but I think that's a topic that he looks into quite a bit. And I like that you can look at it in a simpler way. This one is, this book is so full of everything that can go wrong will.
Mm-hmm.
But except we're going to give you moments of slight happiness to give you hope so that you can be crushed over and over. But yeah, the whole concept of whether I don't know if it's things that have happened to me when I was younger and everything, but I had a situation like Hassan, and the kid who was the ringleader, I'm pretty sure, is just like that Asif was in the book. That
is he out living his life still?
As far as I know.
Ugh,
never said anything about it. So
and it's just
Yeah. The other part I appreciated was that they let it be young kids, because people forget that you don't have to be 15 years old to be a terrible human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it starts young in some ways, because you're more of a sociopath when you're young anyway, because you just haven't developed that understanding or compassion in some ways. You don't understand anything outside of the immediate sphere of what is happening to you right now. So kids that might not as adults participate will as children, because they haven't quite yet figured out that this is totally not okay. And kids that are going to participate in this are going to start now, because they're going to take advantage of the fact that they have people who will go along with it. And so Rob, once he tells Sarab about, like, would you like to come and live with us in America? Sarab at first doesn't really acknowledge it. They don't talk about it, which was kind of weird to me. Understandable, but I was surprised by it narratively.
Well, I think it's like Sarab's trying to figure out why. Why are you doing something nice for me?
And also, somebody came to take him away before, and that didn't go super well.
No, it really didn't.
So
it's gone downhill,
right?
Pretty fucking drastically.
So finally, Sarab accepts and makes him promise that he won't have to go back to an orphanage. And Amir promises this without thinking. It's like, of course you won't. No, we will never do that.
Why did he do that? Don't promise anything.
He just doesn't know. He doesn't know yet. Even after everything he's seen, he's still not quite like, and after getting this news, he's given like 3 options on how to get this kid over to the US. All of them are unlikely, but even the ones that could work out in his favor require him to put this kid back in an orphanage and wait until things get rolling and approved, which could take months. And even after that, probably won't work out.
Yeah.
Because it's all the paperwork that like the Afghanistan is a little busy right now.
Yeah, oddly enough.
And dealing with adoption papers aren't really at the top of their priorities list. So, right?
Huh?
It's really like all of this is so understandable and yet so frustrating.
I know. I mean, I don't know. I'm like,
Kat, she's doing a thing. Get down.
So is everybody still online? What's been going on there? Because, we love you.
I hate it. She goes and sits on the edge of the window and tries to chase moths. And I have a couple of candle holders on the edges of the windowsill.
No.
And they're like teetering, I'm just watching them like.
We haven't had this discussion before.
Right?
Hey, Meg. I asked if everybody was still around since we were.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe the chat like stalled or something since we didn't hear anything from anybody, but.
Yay.
So he winds up telling, this is so wrong. It's so mean.
Just say, I'm going to pay so I can stay in the orphanage with you.
Say anything.
Anything that isn't what you just said, you dumb motherfucker.
He tells Sarab, we may have to put you back in an orphanage for just a little while. And Sarab like loses it, freaks out. Yeah, and is sobbing. And Amir is holding him while he sobs, thinking that he just has to like let this kid get it out. Like it's just a catharsis thing, not understanding that, no, this isn't going away after this kid is done crying. This is a very real thing that he is now having to live with, knowing that you promised something and couldn't come through with it. And now he's going to have to go back to the thing that he's the most terrified of all. So he tells this kid this, lets him cry, goes and takes a phone call while Sarab pours a bath, which he likes to do. He takes baths all the time, sitting in the water, apparently trying to get clean again.
Yeah, I don't understand what that's all about.
Right? What's that?
And I will give him the pass that this man still has to be on some sort of pain medication for all the shit he's going on with.
Mm-hmm.
But still, come on, man. At least call your wife and have her talk to him or something.
He had this like mention of how he shaved with one of those old-fashioned long razors. And I was like, why are you telling me this? Like every time he mentioned something, I was like, what is this, bitch? What are you doing? And sure enough, the way that he writes it too was that he is just getting off the phone with his wife, who has told him the good news. Mm-hmm. We have somebody on the inside who's going to be able to help us out.
Yeah, her uncle is actually fairly fucking high up in the U.S.
Yep. Sheriff John. And he says, no kidding? I know. Anyway, we'll serve as the sponsors. It should all happen pretty quickly. He said the visa would be good for a year. Plenty of time to apply for an adoption petition. It's really going to happen, Soraya, huh? It looks like it, she said. She sounded happy. I told her I loved her, and she said she loved me back. I hung up. Sarab, I called, rising from my bed. I have great news. I knocked on the bathroom door. Sarab, Soraya John just called from California. We won't have to put you in the orphanage, Sarab. We're going to America, you and I. Did you hear me? We're going to America. I pushed the door open, stepped into the bathroom. Suddenly, I was on my knees screaming through my clenched teeth, screaming until I thought my throat would rip and my chest explode. Later, they said I was still screaming when the ambulance arrived. And I'm reading this, and part of me wants to be mad. And the other part of me, again, is just like, yeah, but this is true, though.
Yeah.
Like, of course you would do this. Going through what this kid just went through, and then you being told that you're just going to be thrown back into it again?
Hell no.
No. Bye. Bye.
My faith in humanity had the book stopping here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fact that it didn't end here was like, well, that's a nice break.
Right? Yeah. I was confident that he was going to be okay, but I really appreciated the fact.
Oh, no, I thought he was going to be dead for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be okay, but I wasn't sure how that was going to happen.
Oh, no. I thought the kid was dead for sure.
And I kind of appreciated that even though he's okay, he's like not okay.
No, he's not.
He goes a straight up year without speaking. They bring him back to America with all these plans, thinking basically that he's going to fit into the slot that has been empty where their kids should have been. And that they can have him taking swimming lessons and going to classes and having birthday parties.
And none of those things are bad things. Those are very kind things to do for a little boy. But where the fuck are the therapists?
This is the thing. So I was having this conversation with Rashawn a little while ago because she doesn't have kids. She doesn't want kids.
Yeah.
I don't have kids. I don't want kids. And we were talking about the concept of having children and how very frequently it comes from a kind of fundamentally selfish place where it's more about the parent getting to experience something or do something than it is about the child.
Yeah.
Like, really, if we were doing it for the child, we would not have children because this is a veil of tears.
I mean, even Baba's dislike of Amir's writing, it's the same thing. It's no, that's not going to work. And there is some realism to that, I guess. Like, I didn't go into certain majors because I actually opened up a book and said, okay, well, who makes the most money?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the kind of person I am. But I could see being worried about my kids, becoming a poetry major or something.
Well, but what I mean is more like, not even about the success of your kids, but like as a parent, you want to re-experience your childhood.
Yeah.
or you want to redo things that you fucked up and you hope that your kid's going to get right instead. Or there are tons of instances, unfortunately, of people having children because their marriage is fucked up and they think it's going to fix it. Or having no direction in their life and thinking that a child will help make them responsible.
And then claiming it's true.
Right? And this is something that I kind of appreciated the way that this is approached, because as an author, it's really tempting to be like, oh, he's going to find out that his half-brother had a child. Him and his wife couldn't have kids. So they're able to adopt and have a child that's related, but is, and it works out. But instead, the writer kind of turns it around and is like, they want to have a kid that they want.
Yeah.
That they have this whole idea of how that's going to be planned out already without asking this child at all anything that he's interested in. She's gone out and decorated the place. She's planned out lessons for different things without actually knowing anything about this child, just assuming that he's going to be like eager and interested because he's a child.
Yeah.
And just kind of turned the focus around from not necessarily making it a bad thing, but making it like, yeah, this was about you though.
Yeah.
And this isn't about you.
Yeah, you should have probably, once you heard what was going on, maybe looked into how to deal with a kid with all these problems.
Right.
They're legitimate. I mean, like, my plan, back when I thought I could plan my life. You remember that, right? Remember that?
Yep.
Never knew what was going to happen. I actually set up my life so I could be a foster mom. And if you're going to be a foster mom, you're not going to get kids that are okay. There's no way foster kids are okay, and that's not why they're in the system. But you also have to look into all the things that come along with being a foster parent of, what kind of doctors would be the best for this situation and what is a typical problem that foster kids have and how to deal with that kind of concept. Mm-hmm. And it's not something that you don't get into it because some kid's going to call you mom, because that's not the situation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very different situation. And this, just adopting a kid with those problems, yeah, he's probably going to end up calling Soraya mom, but...
Right. Eventually, maybe, yeah.
Maybe. Or
but
call her the American word for mom is my guess.
Right.
Like the English version for mom.
And it's a really American mindset to be like, oh, let's get therapists and trauma counseling and all of that. But it doesn't sound like Afghani's really truck with that.
Which is still strange to me because she's got a teaching degree,
mm-hmm.
but I can get it being a cultural thing. And I'm just like, but you could help the baby is my
mm-hmm.
first response.
Well, I'm not even sure that it's necessarily that if somebody suggested it, they would turn it down so much as it doesn't seem like that even occurred to them.
Yeah.
That they're just like, well, he's here now. He's safe. That's it. Nobody's going to hurt him here. So that's enough. And the fact that he isn't speaking to anybody is just a bummer, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, and he's silent, moving in and out of places so that he surprises them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, maybe just, I don't know. I just,
mm-hmm. And maybe to a degree too, even if it did occur to them, with this kid being as unresponsive as he is, maybe they just thought he was not going to be participating if they tried to set him up with a counselor.
Yeah.
He's straight up not speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, I would probably try it anyway.
Yeah.
But I get just being like, God, what's the point,
Yeah, or just, how can we know who to trust to take care of this child?
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to have somebody else try and, what if they don't do a good job?
Right.
It's a little dude. I'm so like a mush for kids. Can you tell? This kid is the same age as my boyfriend's son.
Oh.
So like, and he got mugged a couple months ago, and I was not okay with that at all.
Oh my God.
Yeah. They punched him in the
I haven't been mugged. Oh.
I know.
That's rude.
They asked to use his iPhone. They gave him the phone so they could call his parents, big lying liar faces. And then they punched him to run away. I'm like, you guys were way bigger than him.
Ugh, that's so annoying. Just run, guys. Just go.
Yeah, he's tiny.
So yeah, this kid isn't speaking, and he has kind of reached a point where he decides that he isn't going to push anymore. That if this is how this kid wants to live, he will let him. He asks him in the hospital immediately after if he still wants to come live with him and everything. Sarab says, you should have just left me in the tub. And then says, I'm just so tired. And he's like, well, you can take a nap. And he's like, no, I am tired of everything. And I'm like, yeah. Well, you know, that'll happen when your parents are murdered in front of your face. And then you're just like thrown into an orphanage and then taken out and raped a bunch of times. So
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
And then he says the worst part, which is, what can I do, Sarab? Please tell me. I want... He began. He winced again and brought his hand to his throat as if to clear whatever was blocking his voice. My eyes were drawn again to the wrist, his wrist wrapped tightly with the white gauze bandages. I want my old life back, he breathed.
Ugh.
Just kill me.
Right?
This boy. No.
Ugh.
I want father and mother, John. I want Sasa. I want to play with Rahim Khan Saib in the garden. I want to live in our house again. He dragged his forearm across his eyes. I want my old life back.
When he gets off the plane in the US, there's this moment because you're like wondering maybe when he meets his wife, there'll be a connection there. We arrived home about 7 months ago on a warm day in August 2001. Soraya picked us up at the airport. I had never been away from Soraya for so long, and when she locked her arms around my neck, when I smelled apples in her hair, I realized how much I had missed her. You're still the morning sun to my Elda, I whispered. What? Never mind. I kissed her ear. After, she knelt to eye level with Sarab. She took his hand and smiled at him. Salam, Sarabjan. I'm your Kala Soroya. We've all been waiting for you. Looking at her smiling at Sarab, her eyes tearing over a little, I had a glimpse of the mother she might have been had her own womb not betrayed her. Sarab shifted on his feet and looked away. That killed me.
Yeah.
She's so excited and eager, and he's just like, bitch, whatever.
He's just like, I
where can I go sleep?
I can't deal with another promise.
Mm-hmm.
And you almost kind of wish, because it's a woman, after he's been abused and hurt by so many men, that maybe he'd trust a woman.
That was part of my thinking that there might be a connection between them, because it's not another man. But no, he's done with people.
Yeah, he's tapped out.
And then the instant where General Sahib, who is Soraya's father, is voicing his disapproval. So Amirjan, you're going to tell us why you have brought back this boy with you? I have to deal with the community's perception of our family. People will ask. They will want to know why there is a Hazara boy living with our daughter. What do I tell them? Soraya dropped her spoon, turned on her father. You can tell them. It's okay, Soraya, I said, taking her hand. It's okay. General Sahib is quite right. People will ask. Amir, she began. It's all right. I turned to the general. You see, General Sahib, my father slept with his servant's wife. She bore him a son named Hassan. Hassan is dead now. That boy sleeping on the couch is Hassan's son. He's my nephew. That's what you tell people when they ask. And one more thing, General Sahib, I said. You will never again refer to him as Hazara boy in my presence. He has a name, and it's Sarab. No one said anything for the remainder of the meal.
Yeah!
High-fiving a million angels! Oh, that was so satisfying to read.
Oh, and the fact that they both were like, fuck you!
Right?
In different ways.
Oh, so good.
But Amir
so good.
had balls and did shit. It was just so, thank God.
Finally, Amir, you got some balls. It only took 26 years. Thank you, sir.
Oh, God.
Poor
little baby.
It would be erroneous to say Sarab was quiet. Quiet is peace, tranquility. Quiet is turning down the volume knob on life. Silence is pushing the off button, shutting it down, all of it. Sarab's silence wasn't the self-imposed silence of those with convictions, of protesters who seek to speak out to their cause by not speaking at all. It was the silence of one who has taken cover in a dark place, curled up all the edges and tucked them under. He didn't so much live with us as occupy space, and precious little of it. Sometimes at the market or in the park, I'd notice how other people hardly seemed to even see him, like he wasn't there at all. I'd look up from a book and realize Sarab had entered the room, had sat across from me, and I hadn't noticed. He was afraid to leave behind footprints. He moved as if not to stir the air around him. Mostly, he slept. And then this part that I had mentioned, Sarab's silence was hard on Soraya, too. Over that long-distance line to Pakistan, Soraya had told me about the things she was planning for Sarab's swimming classes, soccer, bowling league. Now she'd walk past Sarab's room and catch a glimpse of books sitting unopened in the wicker basket, the growth chart unmarked, the jigsaw puzzle unassembled, each item a reminder of a life that could have been. A reminder of a life that was wilting even as it was budding. Alone. I'd had my own dreams for Sarab. Ugh.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
So then, 4 days ago, on a cool rainy day in March 2002, a small wondrous thing happened. And they go to a New Year's dinner or New Year's park picnic
In San Francisco, which would be nice, honestly.
Right? Afghan New Year's Day, the Saulinau? I wish I knew how to say these things. And we arrived around noon and found a handful of people taking cover under a large rectangular plastic sheet mounted on 6 poles spiked to the ground. Someone was already frying bologna. Steam rose from teacups and a pot of cauliflower aosh. A scratchy old Ahmad Zahir song was blaring from a cassette player. I smiled a little as the 4 of us rushed across the soggy grass field, Soraya and I in the lead, Khala Jamila in the middle, Sarab behind us, the hood of his yellow raincoat bouncing on his back. And the one thing that he has really, it seems, at least to the reader, talked to Sarab about regarding his father is the kite running.
Yeah.
And they're selling kites here with the glass string.
Why with the glass string? Okay.
Because that's how you play the game.
That's fucked up.
It is fucked up.
I'm sorry.
I know isn't it kind of hilarious though that we're talking about this as if it's so terrible when they just were in this war-torn
fucking thing for this kid to have to couldn't they just have a fucking American kite that doesn't have glass to tear the kid's fucking
But then it wouldn't be what his dad did.
You don't need to tell him that.
Oh, I'm sure he knows, right?
It's still a kite.
His dad had to have told him about it too, cutting kite strings.
It's fucked up.
He knew already. There's no not telling him.
Just have it on the top part of the fucking kite, not the whole thing. None of this makes sense. Okay, I'll stop now.
So he goes and buys this kite. I felt a presence next to me and looked down. It was Sarab. Hands dug deep in the pockets of his raincoat. He had followed me. Do you want to try? I asked. He said nothing, but when I held the string out for him, his hands lifted from his pocket, hesitated, took the string. My heart quickened as I spun the spool to gather the loose string. We stood quietly side by side, necks bent up. He saw me looking at him and smiled, waved. I waved back. This is another kid that's got a different kite, the green kite. Sarab was handing the string back to me. Are you sure? I said, taking it. He took the spool from me. Okay, I said. Let's give him a little bit and then teach him a lesson. The glassy, vacant look in his eyes was gone. His gaze flitted between our kite and the green one. His face was a little flushed, his eyes suddenly alert, awake, alive. I wondered when I had forgotten that despite everything, he was still just a child. The green kite was making its move. Let's wait, I said. We'll let him get a little closer. It dipped twice and crept toward us. Come on, come to me, I said. The green kite drew closer yet, now rising a little above us, unaware of the trap I had set for it. Watch, Sarab, I'm going to show you one of your father's favorite tricks, the old lift and dive. Next to me, Sarab was breathing rapidly through his nose. The spool rolled in his palms, the tendons in his scarred wrists like rhubarb strings. Then I blinked, and for just a moment, the hands holding the spool were the chip-nailed, calloused hands of a hair-lipped boy. I heard a crow cawing somewhere, and I looked up. The park shimmered with snow so fresh, so dazzling white, it burned my eyes. It sprinkled soundlessly from the branches of white-clad trees. I smelled turnip korma now, dried mulberries, sour oranges, sawdust, and walnuts. The muffled quiet, snow quiet, was deafening. Then far away across the stillness, a voice calling us home, the voice of a man who dragged his right leg. The green kite hovered directly above us now. He's going for it any time now, I said. Then he shot down. Here he comes, I said. I did it perfectly after all these years, the old lift and dive trap. I loosened my grip and tugged on the string, dipping and dodging the green kite, a series of quick side-arm jerks, and our kite shot up counterclockwise in a half circle. Suddenly, I was on top. The green kite was scrambling now, panic-stricken, but it was too late. I'd already slipped him Hassan's trick. I pulled hard, and our kite plummeted. I could almost feel our string sawing his, almost heard the snap. Then, just like that, the green kite was spinning and wheeling out of control. Behind us, people cheered. Whistles and applause broke out. I was panting. The last time I had felt such a rush like this was that day in the winter of 75, just as after I had cut the last kite, when I spotted Baba on our rooftop, clapping and beaming. I looked down at Sarab. One corner of his mouth had curled up just so. A smile. Lopsided. Hardly there, but there. Behind us, kids were scampering, and a melee of screaming kite runners was chasing the loose kite drifting high above the trees. I blinked, and the smile was gone, but it had been there. I'd seen it. Do you want me to run that kite for you? His Adam's apple rose and fell as he swallowed. The wind lifted his hair. I thought I saw him nod. For you 1,000 times over, I heard myself say. Then I turned and ran. It was only a smile, nothing more. It didn't make everything all right. It didn't make anything all right. Only a smile, a tiny thing, a leaf in the woods shaking in the wake of a startled bird's flight. But I'll take it with open arms, because when spring comes, it melts the snow one flake at a time, and maybe I just witnessed the first flake melting. I ran, a grown man running with a swarm of screaming children, but I didn't care. I ran with the wind blowing in my face and a smile as wide as the valley of the Panjshir on my lips. I ran. It's such a good ending.
I know.
It doesn't make everything all right, but I'll take it.
Yup. Cause yay. And he also said something that you have to think that Hassan said to the baby.
What's that?
Well, because he always said it to Amir, which was for you 1,000 times.
Oh, yeah, for you 1,000 times over.
Yeah, and you have to think that Hassan said it to his baby.
Probably. Yeah, probably to his wife.
Yeah, he's kind of a good dude.
There was a, when I was searching for the cover image for this book to use on the event on Facebook, there was a still from the movie that was taken from behind two boys looking up at the sky at a kite. And it just said, for you 1,000 times over at the top. And I was like, go ahead and rip my fucking heart out. Sure. Why not?
It's fine. It's fine.
Jesus.
I do have to say, the one thing that made me laugh in this entire book was near the end, oddly enough. And it's one day, maybe around 1983 or 1984, I was at a video store in Fremont. I was standing in the Western section when a guy next to me, sipping Coke from a 7-Eleven cup, pointed to the Magnificent Seven and asked me if I had seen it. Yes, 13 times, I said. Charles Bronson dies in it, and so do James Coburn and Robert Vaughn. He gave me a pinch face look as if I had just spat in his soda. Thanks a lot, man, he said, shaking his head and muttering something as he walked away. That was when I learned that, in America, you don't reveal the ending of the movie. And if you do, you will be scorned and made to apologize profusely for having committed the sin of spoiling the end.
I took a photo of that passage and posted it on my Unspoiled Facebook page because I was just like, oh shit, this book is in the middle of like killing me softly, and then it just looks at me and just goes, hey, here's this for you.
All I could think was, I guess we don't have a lot of Afghani listeners.
Right? Like, because the next line, I think, is in Afghanistan, the ending was all that mattered.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I read that part. Oh, there's something else that I meant to mention, too. When he gets his ass whooped, his lip is split down the middle like a hair lip.
Yes, and he has a scar just like his brother did.
Oh, this book. Again, is it subtle? No. Does it work completely?
Yes.
Completely.
What was it? So Kyle just asked, from now on, can we use that image on the Facebook group?
Whenever someone spoils something, I love it. Committed the sin of spoiling the end.
Be like, out. Go to Afghanistan.
Right? If that's what you want. If the ending's all that matters to you.
You belong.
We know some people that you'll feel comfortable with.
God, I'm terrible.
Man, yeah, there's a review in the beginning of this book. And I need to find it because when I saw this, I was like, well, that is a fucking thing to say. And now I can't find, oh, here it is. It is so powerful that for a long time, everything I read seemed bland. Yeah. I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie's like, well, why didn't you cry at this episode of Band of Brothers? And I'm like, meh.
Right? I'm all cried out.
It was terrible. Don't get me wrong. And I cared. And I actually stopped breathing at one point because I'm thinking to myself, no. And that was too busy for my brain to remember you also need oxygen.
Yeah, I hear that.
Because I am actually the person that the aerobics instructor needs to remind to breathe.
Yeah, it is like how much, like, it's not just the tragedy. It's like he just paints this world that feels so alive and real and colored, and you can smell it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how writers do this. Why can't I do this? Can I do this? Maybe someday. Like, it's just so difficult to put your finger on what makes a world feel real.
Well, and it's so ridiculous in some of the stuff that makes it feel real, in that everything he says, like you said, every time there's a detail, you're like, okay, what the fuck is this going to be? But that detail itself isn't just a tool. He makes that tool itself look beautiful. Like, you have this homeless man that he comes across who happens to have known his mother.
Yep. And he's like, yeah, I know that might seem like unbelievable to you guys, but trust me, that shit happen all the time.
Honestly, in a city like that, Buffalo, I'm fucking related to everybody. I forgot about mentioning that scene because they come over the crest of the hill to Kabul, and he's like, he's been warned that it's changed. And he's like, yeah, I know. And then they come over the hill and he's like, what the fucking fuck? It had been this rich, beautiful city with these markets and homes, and not only has everything been fucking bombed, but they cut all the trees down because there were snipers hiding in them. Yeah, and this is something that the author actually experienced.
Oh my God, I can't imagine.
No. I mean, the closest I've ever been was the school I was talking about where I learned Arabic calligraphy. They tore it apart when they closed it down. And it was like the best place I ever went. No offense, Maggie. It was the best place I ever went to school. I still talk to the teachers from there. I miss it like crazy. And when that changed and I went back a few years later and it was all like these condos and they had torn down everything. And there was like parts of the Underground Railroad in it.
Wow.
They just destroyed everything. And it was just like, I'm gonna throw up.
Right. Ingrates.
Pretty much, yeah.
I like that word, ingrates.
Yeah, you guys are you congratulate.
Congratulate. That is like, this is just, it's such a fine line to have a book that's tragic that doesn't feel gratuitous, and he just really nails it, man. Oh, and that ending where he's talking about, it was snowy and I could smell this and I could hear a man calling us, a man who dragged his leg behind him. And I'm just like, why does this feel like my childhood that you're talking about? Why am I having this emotional reaction as if I lived this thing?
Why can I not go and hug Ali?
Right?
Like this Ali, not the Ali I know, because that would be inappropriate, but it would.
It would be inappropriate.
It would.
I just, oh God, this was lovely.
Yeah, I liked too that he doesn't go into in-depth explanation of what his culture is for outsiders.
Yeah. He treats it like you're here and this is what it is and you can figure it out, whatever.
Yep, keep going.
Which I think might be part of what makes it feel so real, makes the world feel so rich and lived in, is that he doesn't stop and explain everything.
Yeah.
He explains here and there when it's really necessary, but
like what kala is.
Right. Or like the rituals that they would ordinarily go through for the marriage ceremony, but that they have to skip.
Oh, that they didn't have the sweets. I love the sweets thing. And they do that in Hindi weddings too. And it's so cute. Oh my gosh. My friend's sweets engagement ceremony, my grandmother was so excited. And she found out it was a sweets thing. So she made like a big hat box, like fucking foot by foot size hat box.
Wow.
Full of cookies.
Nice. And, that's awesome.
And my friend and her sister and her grandmother, who didn't speak much English, all knew my grandma's baking, and they were all trying to like sneak it away.
I love it.
But
I love it.
If you ever get a chance to go to an engagement ceremony like that, go. It's so pretty. And it's really funny when a 5-year-old girl refuses to bow down to a guy because she doesn't see why she has to do it.
Well, I just don't know. I'm here for the cookies, man.
She stamped her foot. It was great.
Oh my God.
Like all the women are bowing down, and the groom was white and absolutely horrified. Like he's like, I know this is tradition and this makes you happy, and I pretty much just want to die right now because my fiance's grandmother, who's 90, is bowing down in front of me, and I'm the biggest douche ever.
Oh man, yeah, I could see that being really uncomfortable.
Yeah, so the 5-year-old who stamped her foot and was like, no.
Oh my God. And that part of the book is because he explains it, but he explains it because we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So he needs us to know why that's important and how that would ordinarily go so that we understand the significance of not doing it.
Yeah.
So it's just like when he has to explain things, there's a real reason for explaining it. And then otherwise it's just like, I'm not going to tell you what this food is. I'm naming the food. If you want to know, you go find out. Like
you have the internet.
Yeah, exactly. There's Google. Go get it.
It was good. Trust me.
And I think that's some of the thing that can kind of take me out of stuff sometimes, because everything that's, it's italicized, and sometimes in books, they'll like italicize something in another language, but then they'll in parentheses be like giving the little translation. Mm-hmm. And it can just be like, listen, if you want to give the translation in the text, just write that then. Don't italicize it and then explain it too.
If you really are that worried, do a glossary of terms at the back.
Right, or something like this.
Yeah.
It was just like, I don't know. I think you kind of like zeroed in on it. What it is that made it feel real was that it never felt like he was explaining the world to white people. Yeah. He's just like, no, this is it. And anybody from Afghanistan or not can relate to this because it's a human story. Yeah. The rest of it's just, it doesn't matter. This was like the hardest book to read in some ways, but it was one of my favorites so far that I've done for the book club.
I was really, really excited that I ended up getting to do this with you. Not just because it was you, which again made me nervous, But also,
stupid.
I was like, what if I fuck up and she hates me? Like, she's the cool kid. I don't want to be
Oh my God.
Yeah, I got put together with you at a class project, and what if she doesn't like me?
Oh my God. In a class project, I'd just be like, you guys all go get some ice cream or something. I'll do it. I was just the biggest control freak.
Which would have been so weird for me because I ended up being in charge of all that shit. Because they're like, Krista will do it. The one day I didn't read for class, one day.
And everybody was like, you were supposed to tell us what it was. What do we do now?
Well, because we were all sitting ahead of time because there was lunch ahead of time. So we all get in and they're like, I couldn't do it because it's Moby Dick and it's the whaling chapters.
I never read Moby Dick, but I know about that book.
Never fucking do it.
Mm-hmm.
His short story about Bartleby the Scrivener is great. Read that. But yeah, finally and they're like, well, Krista, what was it? After they all go around, and this is an honors class, so most of the kids were reading for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But finally, we've gotten to this point where none of us can do it anymore. None of us.
Yeah.
And they get to me, and I was the silent one. No, really, ask Maggie. It's true. I kind of went through life like Sarab for a little while. And so they got to me and they're like, well, Krista, what was it? And I was like, I didn't read. And everybody just went dead silent. We are fucked.
Thanks, guys. No pressure.
I didn't care what they already hated me. What were they going to do?
Oh my God. I remember a kid who would always copy off of me in science class when I was in 7th grade. And one time I didn't.
Kyle, you're a goof.
What's that?
Kyle just wrote, you were the chosen one.
Chosen for everybody to take advantage of.
Yes.
And I remember one time I didn't do, because it wasn't until high school that I started to be like, fuck you guys, just in general. In 7th grade, I was still very much struggling with being super, super quiet, not having any self-confidence at all, and constantly trying to get approval of people. And so this kid wanted to copy off me. And I was like, yeah, sure, go ahead, copy off me. Like, totally, like, but inside I was just like, what the fuck? And I just didn't have the balls to say anything to him because I just didn't want to cause a big fuss.
Yeah.
So one day there was a big quiz and we had assigned seats, and I just switched seats. And that was just all I did, was I just switched seats. And he was just like, I could tell that he knew exactly what I was doing, but he couldn't like get mad publicly because then the teacher would know immediately what was happening and what had been happening. Yeah. So he just like, and after that, I let him copy again, but I kind of had just like made it clear, like, I'm doing you a favor. This is not you like getting to do whatever. I choose to allow you to do this because I'm being nice and you better remember it. And even though it was like just this tiny little grab back of power, it still like meant something to me.
I like it. I like it.
Symbolic, a symbolic victory.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense.
All right. Well, I guess we can wrap this up. This has been a long one. It's been a couple hours. If we were on Crowdcast, I think we would have got cut off.
Well, good thing we don't have to deal with that crap anymore.
Yeah, fucking Crowdcast. Fuck you, man. I'm just giving the finger to the screen, everybody who isn't watching.
I was doing the same thing.
Yep.
I was doing a 2-gun salute.
So thank you very much for joining me, ma'am. Do you want to plug your Bob show? That's what I call it, guys.
Well, I do 2 shows with Jamie, who's already done a couple of the Unspoiled Book Club books, It and Gone Girl. Cloudcast.
Nice, Kyle.
You're hilarious. So there's a delay on the feeds. Kyle is a much faster typer than this. But we do 2 Unspoiled shows because Natasha lets us, and one of them is the constant for the show Lost, which I have not seen, and I'm going through with Jamie. And Jamie, I don't hate it, so stop worrying about it. It's very entertaining. Everybody should listen in, except for Owen, who probably wouldn't like it, and that's why I said Owen wouldn't like it. So.
Yeah, he hasn't watched Lost, huh? I always forget that.
Apparently he's heard a couple of our episodes, which is really nice of him to
Yeah, he was telling me that. He like makes an effort to listen to everybody, which as the owner of the network, you would think that I would do, but I frequently do not because
well, because you have just a few thousand things to do. And Meg, that's very sweet of you. She just said, yay for the constant.
Yay.
And the other one that we do, and just so you know, because if you do follow the constant, we did actually record yesterday. I was out sick as a dog for a while. But we just did Band of Brothers, which is Undeclared Band of Brothers. And we're following that series along with the book. And I don't think Jamie will be able to do any more research without getting her PhD at this point. Like, she's just so, like, she wants to get every single detail right. And it's great. And I'm just like, Jamie, here's some booze.
Right. Like there have been a couple podcasts I've been on where my co-host is like doing, and I'm like, thank you for you doing this.
Yeah.
Appreciate you not making me do any of this.
Yeah. I mean, like, I get it because we do have some military listeners, and I get it. And it's great that she does it. It's fantastic. But I'm just like, it's okay. They're going to forgive you if you make a mistake. We've never been in the military, and they're aware. Yep.
I'm familiar with that brand of paranoia.
Yeah.
I got over it, but it took a while.
I mean, you just get all the emails of, you were wrong.
Yep. Because I used to be like, oh my God, I got it wrong. And now I'm like, yeah, I got it wrong. I just get over it. Whatever. Do I look like NPR? No, it's fine. All right. Well, you guys know where to find us: unspoiledpodcast.com, facebook.com/unspoiledpod, Twitter @unspoiledshow. You can become a patron at patreon.com/unspoiled if you'd like to support us and get access to a bunch of other stuff, because I am doing Twin Peaks with Maggie right now. And I'm also doing Sherlock with Rashawn. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do for patrons only after Twin Peaks is over, but they're going to be coming out with the third season on Showtime soon. So we'll be covering the new season, which will be pretty interesting. That show is a fucking crazy town banana pants. So tune in for that. If you're $5 and above, you get immediate access. If you're $4 and below, you'll get access to Twin Peaks once we're done. And if you are $4 and below, you'll get immediate access to Sherlock. And I just ordered today the postcards for $10 and up patrons. I ordered Basic Snape. I ordered them through a different company, so I'm going to be able to do it because I was having a problem with copyright on the Zazzle store.
They're wrong.
But yeah, Moo is the name of the company that I ordered them from.
Love them. They're the best.
They're the ones who did our business cards that Tex ordered.
Yeah.
They're great. The business cards are gorgeous.
Yeah, I always have clients go through them whenever they say, hey, who should I talk to?
And Moo was cheaper than Zazzle. Zazzle was like $25 extra for less, for fewer postcards than Moo was. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, like, design clients. I don't have law clients. Please don't fire me, NSA.
When you're ready to have your heart broken again, the next book is also amazing. Oh, I meant to mention that because it says he wrote 1,000 Splendid Suns and the Mountains Echoed. So are those part of the same series?
Well,
I didn't realize that. 1,000 Splendid Suns. Okay. Noted. Well, I will check it out because like part of me is like, I don't want to put myself through that. But another part of me is like, yeah, though I do, because that was great.
It was really good.
It was really good.
Yeah.
So
it's not the same storyline. I didn't
okay.
It was, but I just, it would be kind of hard to follow that up.
Yeah, right. Because what do you do other than just pile on more misery? You have to leave it with that and then just walk away from it.
Yeah, I know that one of the stories is more about from a girl's perspective.
Okay.
Because, like I said, he had sisters, so I think that he used some of their information.
Okay.
And their memories. But yeah, It was all Afghanistan stories. I do have a question for you after this about the postcards.
Okay. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Krista, for doing this one with me, being literally the only person to step up to cover this book. Everybody was just like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, and I hadn't read it either. So I was just like, but my mom's like, you need to read this like tons of years ago, which is really funny because I was like, I don't want to.
Yeah. That's kind of the attitude I had also, because I'd heard how sad it was, and I was just like, I'm good.
Yeah, my mom likes to cry. I'm not so, which she won't admit, but it's true.
So yeah, thank you for doing this. And everybody read this book seriously if you haven't. If you've listened to this without reading it, like, I don't know why you would do that, but go.
Maybe you just want
get
to
it.
the end because you're Afghani.
Because you're Afghani.
Just read it.
All right. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And we will see you next month with Dune.
Oh, God.
Dun, dun, dun. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.